Welcome everyone to the Food for Thought speaker series. We're honored to have Suleiman Kachani, William Amick, and Adam Steppen to discuss the subject of Beyond Zoom, managing the connected university. Just a quick note before we get started, and I hand off to Bill for some nicer intros. Please keep yourself on mute until you get to the Q&A section of the session. You can raise your hand if you want to ask a question directly, or you can put a question in the chat. And those questions will come at the end of the session. As I mentioned earlier, you can join us for future sessions using the link provided in the chat, the Food for Thought guest lecture series. And we're very honored to have all three of you with us today. Thank you for joining us, and I'll hand it off to Bill.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you everyone for coming. This is a very exciting session, one that's kind of a great bookend to when we began and entered into this new period for education here at Columbia. And as we transition from that new period to a new and better period, who better to have as our lead singer here? We have two backup singers, and myself and Adam Steppen, but our vice provost and like so many other famous people like Madonna and Bono, Suleiman only needs one name. When you say Suleiman, everybody knows who you mean. He is not just our vice provost, he is former vice dean of the engineering school, and literally one of the most known figures in innovations in teaching and learning in the world, and has been doing this for over a decade. So long before COVID, he was leading the charge to modernize and improve what we do in the classroom. And I think even elementary and secondary education historically has done a better job of innovating than we have in teaching in the university. Too often at the university, particularly prestigious ones like Columbia, research is everything and teaching is, oh yeah, that too. And Suleiman has really flipped the script on that and made teaching a primary element of Columbia's portfolio, such that we can say we're not only a great research university, but we're a great teaching university. I've been honored to work with him. He led a task force on this, which continues to this day, on innovations in teaching and learning. And much of what I do in the classroom today comes from what I've learned from him. So I don't want to take up his time. I'm going to turn the program over to him, and just with deep gratitude for you taking the time out of what is probably even a crazier time than it was a year ago, March, as we get ready for a new semester in September. So thank you, Suleiman, and please take over.
Thank you very much, Bill, for your very kind introduction words. It's really wonderful to be with all of you today to talk about the past 15 months and the next few years. So I really hope we'll be able to have a very engaging session. So let me start with talking about where we were end of February, early March of 2020. It feels like a lifetime ago, but there were early signs of what was to come. We first saw US universities in China being forced to close and move 100% online. And we reached out to colleagues at NYU Shanghai and Duke Kunshan University in order to anticipate our response to the threat. And as many of you know, in spring 2020, a total of 9,600 courses transitioned to fully online at Columbia. And we put a lot of efforts into supporting the teaching and learning mission of the university by supporting teaching and learning at scale. So this photo is actually from March 9. if we can go to the next, it's from March 9, when we held a workshop for ANS faculty and staff in Butler 203. And the session was on Zoom, Panopto, and coursework. And time certainly was not a luxury back in March. We had to make do with whatever little window we had during spring break to recalibrate, reassess, and partner with CUIT and various units to make improvements to support the teaching and learning experience in this new normal. And by spring break, our students were scattered all over the world across many time zones. At the same time, we also devoted significant resources to develop and launch detailed teaching and learning resources to help faculty and graduate student instructors. And these resources have proven to be an invaluable foundation in helping us prepare and deliver fully online and hybrid courses. The next window of opportunity we had to make iterative improvements was, of course, last summer. And we partnered with colleagues in CUIT, the CTL, and teaching and learning units across the university, of course, including the Picker Center at SIPA, to come up with various configurations to convert teaching and learning spaces on campus to be able to deliver and support high flex learning scenarios. We now have 144 registrar classrooms in Morningside that are ready with best-in-class technologies. We also developed 2 institutes, the Hybrid and Online Teaching Institute for Faculty, which is a combination of an asynchronous course with 5 modules and an optional synchronous component. And we also have a version for graduate student instructors that we call Supporting Hybrid and Online Learning and Teaching. And another element, of course, has been developing program flexibility, both in terms of modality and delivery, but also in terms of intake. A number of schools were able to allow students to start their program fall A, fall B, or spring. We made some changes to the academic calendar in order to support students who were facing a lot of uncertainty, particularly international students. Fortunately for us, we had some very strong foundations and track record for innovation that was critical in helping us navigate through the various transitions as an institution. So from 2013 to 2015, we were at the forefront of the MOOC evolution. Our strategy and approach has always taken into account the possibility of disruptions. And now we offer some 60 courses, as well as a number of professional certificates, MicroMasters, and specializations on edX, Coursera, and other leading platforms. Just for you to know, we've had over 4 million learners on edX and Coursera over the past 8 years. Between 2014 and 2018, we did launch the teaching and learning RFPs. We introduced them back in October 2014. They have allowed us to support over 200 projects led by faculty who have been transforming the way they teach by redesigning entire courses, or by introducing a small module in their class, or by creating massive open online courses, or making large-scale changes to a department or school curriculum, by introducing interdisciplinary curricular innovations, as well as novel ways of integrating technologies such as AR and VR. A number of these awards were actually given to our friends, Professor Hemig and Adam, who have been really at the forefront of innovation, not only for SIPA, but for the university. And so over the years, we have seen exceptional examples in transforming courses and pedagogies and curricular innovations, such as flipped and blended classrooms and teaching effectively with technology. And many of these projects have really served as a strong foundation for the innovation that was required during the height of the pandemic. In 2015, we established the Center for Teaching and Learning, CTL, which is a central unit that supports Columbia's entire faculty and graduate student instructors and community. And this past year, the Columbia Center for Teaching and Learning has transitioned from serving as an important resource for the teaching and learning community to really functioning as an essential service of Columbia University. Very much like IT and dining and housing, the CTL has become an essential service of the university. In addition, in 2018, we formally launched the Science of Learning Research Initiative, also called SOLAIRE, which is a hub for cross-disciplinary research in the learning sciences. And last summer, during the height of the pandemic, we introduced a new grant program, the Provost SOLAIRE Seed Grants, for faculty-led discipline-based education research projects. And some of these projects, which took place this past fall and spring, are groundbreaking in terms of using, for example, VR in undergraduate classes. Finally, this is something that typically doesn't get a lot of mention. We were very lucky last year to have an educational technology stack, which was already well established and iterated upon. And we relied on core technologies and services during our move to support remote teaching. So this may seem natural, but we introduced Canvas to Columbia in 2014 and quickly made it the university-wide LMS. We then convinced all the schools to adopt Panopto as the video hosting solution in 2017. And we also introduced Zoom and made sure it's available and integrated with Panopto and Canvas in 2018. So if we didn't have Canvas, Panopto, and Zoom already in place back in early March, that transition that took 1 week to go fully online would have taken 6 months. And we were super lucky that we have had a bottoms-up approach involving all schools working collaboratively for many years to have a consistent student experience and an educational stack that is managed centrally, but with the ability of each school and each unit to have its own sub-instance and customize that educational stack. And we also, around that educational stack, also have best-in-class teaching apps that are easily integrated with the app. So the aggregated technology we put in our classrooms last summer and fall will undoubtedly serve us well beyond the pandemic, and now also opens more doors for introducing more hybrid and online courses and programs. And as we prepare to returning to the classrooms, we think that there are certain elements of teaching and learning from the pandemic that are critical to retain. And we will be working as an academic community to define what are these elements that we would like to retain. And I think part of this, there is a desire to create more functional course sites on Canvas. Students appreciate now well-produced asynchronous content. and in-class and Zoom sessions that are grounded in active learning. And my colleagues Bill and Adam will be talking about some aspects of these innovations that we hope we will actually not only retain but actually scale over the next months and years. So as we think about returning to normal and imagine what's next, there are some key takeaways. We need to be open to new and mixed modalities of teaching and learning. We need to expand our expertise on technology and pedagogy across the entire university. We are very lucky that we had this grand experiment where we forced all faculty of the university to actually use technology. But now how do we take that to the next level? And we need to use this experience and build upon it for the future. And finally, uncertainty seems to be the only constant. So it's really important for us to be prepared to adapt. And as we think about returning to normal and imagine what's next, there are, it's really important for us to think that maybe as we think about future generations of students, COVID-19 might not be the only disruption in the 2 or 4 years that they spend at Columbia. And so a key question for us is how do we build the university of the future, and how do we ensure resiliency and instructional continuity despite any uncertainty that may lie ahead. I'll transition it now to Bill, who will provide a professor's view of the past 16 months.
Thank you, Suleiman. I think you gave us a great retrospective and perspective on where we're going. For me, if I think back to a year ago, February, I'd just gotten back from the last international trip I've taken since to South Korea. And several weeks later, we went from the kind of teaching that I had been doing, which was much different than I had done in the past with Adam's help. But all of a sudden we went from the whatever it was, the 4th or 5th week of the semester, totally live, totally in the room, to totally on Zoom. For me, I felt safer and better to be sitting here where I am now at my desk. So I did my Zoom not from Cape Cod or Beijing, but from this room 805 in the SEPA building. And I weathered the pandemic here, and it worked well. And I think one of the things that most important for me to emphasize is that there are really 3 components to a successful course. The professor, yes, but the students as well, because every class is a partnership. And then finally, in this new world, without the support of the technology and the experts in that technology, whether they be both the connections like we have now, but also the case studies, particularly the digital case studies that Adam has helped us develop, we wouldn't have been able to survive. It's a quick picture of when we moved from 2020 early to the fall. This is my fall class. And as you can see from the picture, it's rather lonely in the room. There are just a few of us in the room, and you can see on the screen, the class had 66 participants, and we had at best 8 or 9 people in the room, and 50 or 60 all over the world. The infrastructure was great. We had a lot of help from the administration. And I think all told, I think the experience went quite well. Students seemed to enjoy it. In many respects, we were doing a similar format to the way we did before. Everyone looked at a film, a case study in advance of class. We discussed it early on in the class. Suleiman and I were talking earlier about guest speakers as being a huge positive innovation. We'd always had guest speakers, but they were occasional. And it was very hard, particularly for me with a night class, to get people to come up to Columbia University at 7 o'clock at night to talk, particularly if they were in DC, or in some cases, this is one of our alums who was the COO of the food bank at the time. So she was crazy busy, but she was able to connect with us from her office to be live in the classroom. So I hope one of the innovations we will keep going is professor in the class, most of the students in the class, but guest speakers from all over the world beaming in. It adds just another component that makes teaching more effective and gives us a way to connect with the real world in real time. Digital case studies to me are a major move forward, again, with the support of Suleiman and the administration here at SEPA. We have now over 20 visual and written case studies, which I use virtually every week in my teaching. They make the lessons come alive. They help us see what people are doing in the field as well as reading about them. And again, it allows for a lot of pre-work to be done pleasantly. My own judgment about today's student is they read only when necessary. They watch video and devour video willingly. So we've tried to make video a big part of the preparation for class. And I think it's worked really well. We've been doing it now for 7 years. We're getting better at it every day. And again, the Canvas course site with all the film, access to all films, not just the ones we use in the class, as well as all the exercises, all the readings. It's a one-stop shop for the class. Our executive education programs are using the same technology. We have a very important program. And Suleiman, when he finished, mentioned the change and threats and things we may confront. I mean, you can't, if you look at any media any day, you'll see cybersecurity and cyber crime and cyber espionage and cyber disruption all over the place. We are working with the government and the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Singapore on a executive program to help them get better at it. And in the course of it, we're getting better as well. And by the way, if you go to the Picker case collection, you'll see 2 and soon 4 case studies on some of these cyber crimes and the implications of it and how it's reverberated around the world. One on Target, for example, and what happened to them several years ago. We also completed, we have a 20-year-old, it's the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this year. And right after 9/11, we were selected to do a management training program for the next generation of leaders at the FDNY, which, as you know, was devastated by 9/11. Well, that program continues to this day. And this year was the first time we had ever conducted that program virtually. We just completed the year. We had our last sessions live, but the case studies and course works and the course builder have enabled us to continue that program uninterrupted. Another executive program that we're doing is with Brazil. And we are working with the largest, one of the largest public universities there to utilize filmed classes that we did as part of our pilot program with Brazil, a distance learning EMPA, which we did in 2018-19. And we are now able to use that technology in those programs to provide executive education in Brazil beginning hopefully this fall. So with that, let me just, if you could introduce the whole slide. For me, I look forward to this fall to at least flipping the ratio and having the vast majority of students in the room, but maybe not eliminate the idea of one screen of Zoom going forward in the future to allow people who can't get to campus, who would never be able to afford to come to campus, executive students who sometimes have problems and exigencies at work that don't enable them to come physically to class, to use this HyFlex that Suleiman invented, to use it selectively going forward so that we can reach more students from more places at more income levels as we move forward. Again, the blended model has worked well for us over the last 7 years, and we'll continue to use it as we go forward, pandemic ending notwithstanding. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Adam to take us through the last part of the presentation.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Suleiman, and thank you, Bill. It's an honor to be here, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some specific programs that are basically examples of some of the things that Suleiman came out of his leadership, and most of these came out of specific RFP grants out of his office over the years. So it's a little bit of a history of the last 7 years. So just we're a unit at SEPA, and we started off in 2014-15 doing some MOOCs, including the Jeff Sachs MOOCs, one of the first, I think, one of the early MOOCs that was done at Columbia, and then filming classes in digital cases. We did a sort of a crash project with Brazil in the early years. Then in 2017, we said, well, we want to really kind of make it easier to build good-looking websites for our executive education and other classes at SEPA. So we developed this thing called Course Builder, which again, directly with the help of Suleiman and Sandesh and the people at CTL, to try to build a tool to make it a little easier and faster to build websites that had more video and had more images. And then we, in the last 2 or 3 years, we've been working with a number of partner institutions and at Columbia to sort of say, well, we have so many talented students at Columbia, and many of them have fantastic media skills. Perhaps they are the natural partners for us in making cases, or now actually working with professors in flipped classes. And so we've had a lot of success. We initially, again, got a small grant from Suleiman's office to buy some gear to give to students. And we gave to students who took them on their summer SEPA summer projects, their summer placements, or their capstones. So we had a number of teams who traveled with these, really pretty inexpensive bits of gear to places like Peru, Vietnam, Uganda, as part of their regular research. And they came back with just fantastic case studies that we then, our team, partner with them to make them into case studies. So maybe next slide. And then the Course Builder, which I already mentioned, we're now sort of making a new version and sharing it again with Suleiman's help with other schools at the university and some other partners. So we're very excited about that. Maybe we'll just go to the next. Next slide, please. And then our digital cases, as I mentioned, our vision is that, I think that, most university classes have a lot of shareable assets in the form of peer-reviewed academic papers. And K-12 schools have a lot of shareable assets in the form of Khan Academy videos, or maybe even TED Talks. And we feel that perhaps digital cases could be a new format that universities could create and share. And so we are sharing ours. We've had, next slide, we started sharing a couple of years ago, and this year we had more than 180 people from 140 universities around the world download and use our cases, which we thought was just fantastic. And in fact, we're teaching a class starting in 2 weeks with has 130 people from 20 different countries who are taking a very short online version of how they can make case studies. So it's we feel that this is a real interesting movement. We're thrilled to be part of it, and we really appreciate the support we've gotten. And I think, next slide. And then, as Suleiman mentioned, I think the sort of next frontier on the blended classes is to make it a bit easier for very busy professors to record their own flipped class videos. So we're working right now, and we're filming at SEPA last week and next week, some new videos to show some simple workflows that would make it easy for professors to record themselves. We're also going to be giving certain classes some additional support in terms of microphones and lights to make it easier for certain classes to offer flip videos. And that this would all be part of a program we're doing this summer for a number of classes across different university departments and different colleges. So we're very excited about this. I'm thrilled to have a chance to roll these new innovations out and see how they work on a wider scale. So I think that's what I wanted to cover, and I'll put it back now to Bill and Suleiman, and perhaps some Q&A.
Well, thank you, everyone. Normally now in our food for thought session, we open it up to our participants and our friends who are with us to ask questions or make comments. I see a number of people who've been with us before. I invite you to jump into the chat room or address Suleiman or Adam or even me directly. Doesn't have to be a question, it can be a comment as well.
Well, maybe I'll get it started. I have a comment. I think it's, well, as an alum of SEPA, I'll say I think it's a great step in the right direction. I think, Bill, you mentioned about diversity, inclusion, bringing people who wouldn't normally have access. I think that's a really important point that's often forgotten when we talk about the Zoom situation that we're in. There are a lot of students who can't move to the States because of visa restrictions, which we're seeing. But then there are also students, it's very expensive to move to New York, to shift your whole life over. And for the community that we serve, there's a lot of professional individuals with families, with other responsibilities. This is a great opportunity. And I think it would be wonderful to see this continue and develop. And I'm very honored to be here with you guys doing this amazing work. So.
Thank you, Jeremy. Maybe I can just echo what you said. I do think the experience we've had over the past 16 months is definitely going to enable us to increase access to Columbia content across the world. There is no doubt about that. I think our faculty are going to feel much more comfortable developing content that we can offer not only face-to-face, but also in a hybrid way and in an online way. And so obviously the way to maximize access is to have it fully online and to have it at a price point that is either zero or very low in order to be able to engage with the world. But we are also thinking, across the university, various schools and departments are thinking about offerings that could involve some low residency, either in our campuses in New York or also our global centers. Mm-hmm. So there are tremendous opportunities when we think about access and when we think about lifelong learning. That is something that we will have a number of initiatives launched as early as this summer in order to capture this aspect. I do want to mention two additional points related to this. One is an important constituency in that lifelong learning space is our alumni. And so instead of having every department or school develop their own resources to engage alumni over their entire life beyond graduation. We would like to think about a centralized resource that would help schools develop content for what we would be calling, as now is common in this space of lifelong learning, the 60-year curriculum. So you came to SIPA for 2 years, Jeremy?
I did the dual degree. I was here for a year.
A year. So we now want you to be connected with us over 60 years. And it's not only about upskilling and reskilling, but also it's about following your passion, learning about various content. And that should not just be limited to SIPA, it should be inclusive of all content that Columbia can offer. So we will be developing a number of initiatives in this space. And then finally, on inclusive teaching and learning, before the pandemic, the CTL had done a lot of work there. And we actually had developed a MOOC on edX on inclusive learning and teaching. That's actually very successful. And we actually facilitated it with cohorts of instructors. And maybe my colleagues Sandesh and Meryl can put in the chat some of the links to our work on inclusive teaching and learning. And then during the pandemic, we created an additional guide, but this time a guide on inclusive teaching and learning online. And interestingly, that's the second most downloaded resource after the main teaching online resource, both within Columbia and outside. So there is certainly a tremendous interest in this aspect of inclusivity, both in the physical as well as the virtual classroom.
Suleiman, in the chat, we have a question from Annette. What are your thoughts about OPMs like 2U?
So thanks, Annette. We think that OPMs have a role to play in the online space. So OPM stands for Online Program Managers. And we certainly are seeing a number of our peers, but including some schools at Columbia who are engaging with OPMs. So I'm all for innovation and partnership, even with the private sector, when that partnership with the private sector is enabling us to build capacities that we otherwise don't have. So some of these OPMs have some experience that some schools don't have. For instance, recruiting and digital marketing to attract students for online programs. It could be some elements of course design or student services specific to online students, and so on and so forth. And for these type of engagements, as long as they are quite focused and limited, hopefully for non-degree programs as opposed to degree programs, and the goal for a school or a department is to build capacity and learn from the OPM so that they can do it themselves. We think that that's actually a fairly healthy interaction. What we have not seen at Columbia is a large-scale partnership with an OPM across multiple degree programs. I think for that, we would need to be careful. We would need to determine what we should build internally versus what we should externalize. And we should have very rigorous governance, both within a school as well as the university level, to vet potential partnerships like this, to make sure that we are okay with the impact of such partnerships.
Suleiman, there's another question from one of our regulars and alums, Paul. What are your thoughts of asynchronous versus synchronous learning on online learning in particular?
I think this was also touched upon by both you, Bill, and by you, Adam. I do think asynchronous has a big role to play as well, particularly in well-produced content that enables students to learn a certain topic in ways that are not necessarily possible in a live setting. And so the digital cases are a prime example for that. So I do think, the future in the degree space is certainly finding the right combination between synchronous and asynchronous, and really having the asynchronous part, add and augment the learning. But going back to the question about access, for access purposes and scaling our ability to touch the world, asynchronous has a lot of a big role to play. So when we think, for example, about the fourth purpose, which is a major university initiative, a lot of the work on the fourth purpose and Columbia World projects does involve training of communities around the world. And there, agility and asynchronous content is really key. And I think we're going to see more of that with time.
Suleiman, you mentioned something earlier, which I think has real potential in this particular area, is using our global centers more as a place of convening and meeting, particularly when we're talking about time zones that are 12 or 14 hours out of sync, for students and working professionals and community people to view content asynchronously, and then maybe have events or even quarterly meetings at the Global Center where people could come together and discuss something that they've all seen or watched. I know there's some of this done, but there could be a lot more, it seems to me.
We absolutely can do a lot more, and we should. And I do. I've had several conversations, including recently with Safwan Masri, who is our EVP of global centers and global partnerships. And I do believe that there, COVID has also been nudging in the right direction. As some of you know, the global centers expanded their footprint during COVID by having a number of pop-up centers across the world. And interestingly, the intake from our students across the globe has been phenomenal. And so we've had a great partnership with WeWork, across various geographies. And we have seen a lot of students across all the schools going to these pop-up centers 3 to 4 times a week to have a space to engage with Columbia, to be with other folks. And so while this service was open during COVID for our students who would not have been able to connect with us because many of them did not have visas or were facing travel restrictions, I do believe that we would see the same thing with alumni and also communities around the world. So I do think, Bill, there is tremendous opportunity for us to leverage this. We just have to be cognizant of local regulations. So we cannot hire local instructors and run a degree program in another country without going through their Ministry of Education and getting the proper approvals, but certainly in the non-degree space, professional education, executive education, interdisciplinary education. I do think there is a lot to be done there, and we just have to create the right models for doing that. Another aspect of the work we would be doing in the global centers does involve, and Bill, you probably have faced a similar challenge, is I think our global centers would benefit from having teams that are engaged in recruiting students and learners locally and doing that recruiting element that is very hard for us to necessarily be doing from New York.
Yeah.
And so if they can augment their teams to be able to attract learners and students, I think that actually can be beneficial to all the schools.
I agree. And I think Columbia, not everybody agreed with it at the time, but I think building this network of global centers was far better than going down the route of establishing a campus or two campuses or three campuses around the world, which in my judgment never worked and took enormous amounts of resources and couldn't deliver. Not because they didn't try, but just, if I come to teach at Columbia, I'm not coming to teach in Beijing. So telling me, well, now we're in Beijing, so why don't you go over there? Not that appealing for faculty members. So the global centers were built on people who were already committed to a region and maybe even already lived there. And I think was a wise decision.
I couldn't agree more, Bill. I think we have seen that peers that have gone the route of multiple campuses have seen that it's very hard to not have second and third class citizens, both in terms of faculty as well as in terms of students. And I think one of the great things that we have done in establishing global centers is to be humble enough to say, this is not just about us teaching the world, but us connecting with the world and also learning from the world.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way communication as opposed to, we know better and we're going to establish a campus and we're going to teach you the right way how to learn a certain discipline. I think that our approach with global centers is definitely a magnificent one.
Adam, you want to say something?
Oh, sure. Well, just I think, obviously, this is, for me, a lot of fun to be on this panel because this is, the life we've been living the last 7-8 years has been this roller coaster. Sandesh is on here too. We always trying to think about how these things, and obviously Columbia, to be part of Columbia University that has this global reach is fantastic. So it's been exciting to be part of these projects. I definitely agree with, the comments being made and the thoughts about, how we could do things to make classes hopefully richer for students on campus, and also in that process, create assets that could be used in other ways. And we're trying to do this all the time. And so that's why actually this project in Brazil and also in Singapore in some ways is so exciting, because we're doing exactly that. We're taking lectures that we recorded with different professors at SEPA, repackaging them not as a degree program, but as certificate programs. But and so it's very exciting. So I think that this pandemic has been terrible. Obviously, it had huge impacts on everybody, but there are some silver linings in different areas. And certainly, I think the fact that we have so many classes, with these HyFlex equipment. We've been doing a bunch of things recently in the HyFlex classes at SEPA, and they're really great. Like, they really work well. They're hard to use, but once you get them down, they really work really well. So I do think that if that could be a legacy of this, I'm sure the university will be richer for it. So it's exciting.
Adam, could you give us 2 minutes, everybody, about what we've been doing with the Open Society? Because I think that's an interesting model of teaching others to teach themselves?
Sure. Well, it's been very exciting. So there's a new initiative. Again, the timing is sometimes everything. So in February of 2020, a month and a half before the pandemic, really took over, George Soros announced $1 billion initiative to fund a global network of universities. It was built on a bunch of universities that we run out of Bard College, strangely enough, because for a bunch of weird reasons. But so they had, in a way, some of the same problems that Columbia has in terms of global centers. How do you teach across time zones? And so we were able to, we become a partner along with a lot of other Columbia partners in this network. And we've got a number of grants from them to basically to train the trainers, or how do you teach professors in Berlin and Palestine and Kyrgyzstan and different places to make a flipped class. So it's sort of, Suleiman, the same things, as you know, and Sandesh knows, that we're doing at Columbia with the help of CTL. We're also trying to think, how can we share this? Like, I think so, like your inclusive teaching MOOC, that was something developed at Columbia to help people on campus here, but it was a resource that was really something that was worth sharing with the world. And so we hope that we can do that a bit too. I think it's fun and exciting that this idea of open resources and sharing things. So it's been interesting. So so with the Open Society, we're teaching a version of our SEPA course on how to make case studies, but we've put it all online and we filmed it. And we're doing this summer, we're doing it, like I mentioned, for high school kids, actually. So we're doing a version for high school climate activists who are all trying to make climate a class at their schools. And they're from Bangladesh and Palestine and Egypt and Europe. It's an amazing group of people. We're going to meet for the first time next Wednesday, actually. So they're all going to make videos for their high schools, but in a similar way to we make our videos, or longer videos at Columbia. So it's been an exciting time, and they've been very supportive, the Open Society, with some of the same flip class stuff. So Suleiman, I know they're going to want to have follow-up talks with you about seeing other collaborations, and can they perhaps use some of the things that we're doing. And they've been good partners, I think, and they're doing it for the right reason. So.
Thank you, Adam. And I do see a question or a comment from Annette on the chat about, again, going back to synchronous versus asynchronous. I do believe that just asynchronous content may not work for everybody, and certainly folks with self-motivation and the right initial background are the ones who perform best when only asynchronous content is available. But I do think the right mix of the two is the right answer, I think, and that mix can vary from one course to another. But asynchronous enables a number of things. It enables a flipping of a classroom by creating very high quality content that folks can actually view, and remove some of that passive learning that happens when an instructor is writing on the whiteboard and moving that to an engaging video. It enables students to review the material multiple times and go back to specific portions to better learn the material. And I think that's actually powerful. And when augmented with the live synchronous content, I think that's really the right balance that we would like to find.
I think in the end, one thing that I'll just say from my own perspective is that I so appreciate the students who were able to come to the class. There's an energy, and we're herd creatures. We like to, just like horses. I know horses. Horses like to be with other horses, and we like to be with other people. So having that in-person content really, really energizes people. And when there's stuff shared in the beginning, before they come to class, we can learn together. And one of the reasons why I've kept teaching most of my adult life is because I say this, and it's true. I learn something in every single class I go to. So hopefully the students learn something from me, but I always learn something from them. And so that learning together, I think, just moves the ball down the field, as we say. But Jeremy, I think we're very close to our time limit. So let me flip it back to you.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you, Suleiman and Adam, for this amazing presentation. You really went into the weeds, and we're really proud of the work you're doing. And obviously, it's been very essential to our transition in this past 15 months. And hopefully, we'll see this be a trend throughout the whole university. And thank you again for joining us. So we'll just close off and say, if you want to join us for our next Food for Thought, the link is in the chat, and we hope to see you again. And have a wonderful day, everyone.